And we'll have to, people will still be able to log in to view it on Zoom, but the YouTube link will have to upload this at a later date.
All right. There's Toady. All right. All right. Are we all here? We have to try to count my screen here. I think we are, aren't we?
Sorry
Okay.
for the delay.
No worries.
Computer problems.
Well, I think everyone's here, so we're going to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Town of Scarborough Ad Hoc Charter Review Committee meeting for February 11th, 2021. If we could have a roll call. Toady, would you help us?
Annalee?
Here.
Okay. Mike Stevenson?
Yeah.
Mike Wood? Karen Shoup?
Here.
Nick McGee?
Here.
Mary Starr?
Here.
Richard Silkman?
I'm here.
Allison Bristol?
Here.
Alan Foster?
Here.
Leanne Casalonis?
Here.
Betsy Gleistein?
Here.
Jean Marie Caterina?
I think I'm here.
Okay, and Liam Gallagher and myself. I think I got everybody.
Thanks, Toady.
You're welcome.
All right, for item number 3, we have the approval of the minutes from January 28th, 2021. Has everyone had a chance to review those?
So 2 clerical questions, corrections were sent to me. I sent the corrections to Toady, but I noticed the ones that went out still had them. And those were the arrival of Jean Marie. I did not take that out of my template, so that should be deleted. And I have Mike Stevenson on Subcommittee 1. He should not be on Subcommittee 1.
Yeah, I'm on Subcommittee 1.
Right.
Yes.
So I apologize for that. It's still the initials MS, just a different name. So,
That makes sense.
so I've already corrected those 2 errors, by the way.
All right, and so the ones that were distributed, Toady, out to the public, we need a motion to amend those.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the amendments as Annalee has stated.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion on those minutes? All right, I will call a roll. Mike Stevenson.
I approve that.
Alan Foster.
Approve.
Annalee Rosenblatt.
True.
Karen Shoup.
Yes.
Mike Wood.
Yes.
Mary Starr.
Yes.
Allison Bristol.
Yes.
Richard Silkman.
Yes.
Nick McGee. Yes, sure, that is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. All right, next item on our agenda this evening is communication protocols. Sub item number 1 is responding to resident comments and questions. So this is on here largely just because we are starting to get input from the public. We're receiving emails and kind of wanted to go over, or maybe even Toady or Betsy or even Jean Marie, some of the protocols that you use, and seeing if we should be incorporating those here on this committee. I know it's easy to want to respond quickly to an email, but on some occasions, somebody might think you're speaking on behalf of an entire committee. On other occasions, I know, at least from my role on the planning board, typically we will let staff respond and we'll just incorporate the comments into our public meeting. So I don't know, Jean Marie, do you want to kind of weigh in on your thoughts on some of that?
Well, the town council, we respond as we wish to constituents. Some of us copy everyone, others don't. One of the things we have to be careful with on council is not getting into a back and forth or a conversation, particularly between councilors, that's not in front of the public. So that's how we operate. So
And I'll just add, Jean Marie, occasionally some of us will say, we don't speak for the council. I mean, it's always appropriate if you want to say that, but
Yeah,
usually
that's true.
the opinions just come across as our opinions. We're completely different from the BOE. We're independent elected officials. So staff, I would say, occasionally answers for us if it's a technical question, but not in place of us. Tom will say, I think I can add some information to this, or and the chair will sometimes just reply to make sure, especially if we're getting a lot of email on a topic that it's been received, because a lot of times people just wonder if it even got there. So the chair will say, I just want you to know, the council received it. So that's the way we do it.
Leanne, do you have any thoughts?
I didn't say for the board, when we have emails, the chair responds and copies everyone else so that we're seeing what's going out. But the individual members don't respond back to constituent email.
Thanks. Richard?
I mean, we're an ad hoc committee. We have no decision-making authority, and we can't make a decision that's binding on anybody. So given that, I would think that the rules of communication with citizens should be very different from boards where the individual members actually vote and their votes mean something in terms of either policy or consequences. So I don't see any particular problem here with individual members responding at will and at their discretion to comments that come in from citizens. If we were the school board or the planning board or the board of appeals, for the assessors or any of those boards that have decision-making authority, I would view it differently. But in this case, I don't see it where there's a problem.
Thank you, Richard. Mike?
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with who specifically responds. I'd certainly like to keep and like to get a copy of any responses that go out. I think we should at least give a little bit of thought to a sort of boilerplate response, because I think we've got an opportunity to point the citizens involved back to the Charter website where they can get more information. So that would be my only comment, is that we should have a consistent message sent out, and we shouldn't make sure that one's answered within seconds, but nobody knows it, and then 3 or 4 other people answer shortly thereafter. I think one response is enough. That's my own take on it.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I think my my initial thoughts is that we, I think it's a little bit of Richard and a little bit of Mike's thoughts here on this, which is I think we can respond to people. I just want to make sure that we are not, as Mike said, sending maybe mixed messages or acting like we're responding on behalf of the entire committee. So maybe some sort of disclaimer if we're going to respond to a comment that's sent to you saying, my response is mine alone, and my thoughts are included here and don't speak on behalf of the committee. I think in general, I'd be happy to either work with Liam or staff on, just a general boilerplate response that we can send out to the comments that are coming in, maybe to town hall versus directly through this committee. How do you feel about something like that, where it's your comments have been received, we appreciate it, that they'll be passed on to the committee, they'll be debating any of these ideas through their subcommittee work and regular committee work, something very boilerplate like that, and then point them at the website for dates and times that they can join meetings if they wish.
So Nick, what would be your response to somebody who wrote to you or to Karen about something they heard her say and they wanted to follow up with her? What did you mean by that? Or I really like
what I would personally do is they would get my boilerplate response saying, thank you, I've shared this with staff so it can end up on the tracker report. You can follow progress on the website. It would be pretty, I don't want to, and this probably just goes back to some of the planning board things that we do too. I don't want to necessarily directly engage in the topic without a full committee. So I would leave it pretty standard and then leave my thoughts or points of discussion on the topics that are being brought forward to the meetings, whether it's this meeting or through the subcommittee meetings.
I guess, and I'm not sure if this has come up in the committee discussion yet, but just a word to the wise, if you respond, someone sends us an email to the group email, all of your personal emails are masked. If you respond, it's coming back through your personal email. So just as long as people are comfortable with that. Also, all of the communications on, even though it's an ad hoc committee, communications in this capacity between yourself and constituents are theoretically subject to FOIA. So you may need to turn those communications over. So just something, a lens to look through as you're crafting emails and something to keep in the back of your mind.
Hey, Karen?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of more in line with Nick and Liam when it comes to the communication with the residents. I was actually sort of surprised to find out that so many people had individually responded without replying all. I think it's important that we all know that someone's responding. I personally am sort of again on the line with Nick with a generic response. We received, your input and then address that input during the meeting. And that's kind of where I stand.
Thank you. Mary?
Yeah, I agree with Nick and with you, Nick, and with Karen. I think to me, it's just easier to have, the chair, reply, and then, and I can't imagine that it would really be anything that would need beyond a boilerplate, for the most part, unless it's like somebody said that, they were asking about a specific comment, but, I think that works.
Thank you. Mike?
I just wondered, given the comments about boilerplate, how does everybody feel about an autoresponder, just sending that in response to any email to the charter group, and then we know that something's been acknowledged in a professional, non-committal type of way.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on this topic?
So Nick, this is Betsy. This is a complete personal preference. I'm sorry I don't have my camera tonight. But whether it's email or talking to your neighbor next door in the street, 6 feet apart outside, or whether it's on the phone. I know I personally am still trying to get input. So sometimes these things get kind of stilted, but I think the outcome will be better if we're still trying to solicit ideas and have back and forth and conversations. I think it's really hard on Zoom, even if someone is participating. You could conceivably see us having, if we had time, something like a round table. If we weren't in this, which is a little bit more flow-free conversation. So it's totally personal preference, but I know that I'm still going to engage with people and get their thoughts and their input. I hope others do as well, so that we don't become, too insular in our own ideas. So that's just my thought.
Thank you, Betsy. Richard?
Yeah, I'm with Betsy on this one. I mean, if people want to write me an email and they want to express their opinions and they want to know how I feel about an issue, I don't have any problems with responding to them, and even to the point of telling them how I believe or what I believe an issue should be. I think it's important that people have an opportunity to talk to members, and if people are willing to engage with them, I think they should be allowed to do it independently. I'm mindful, of course, of what Liam mentioned, that everything is part of the public record and it's all discoverable. But I think that's what citizen groups are for. And if I send something to a group and I get back a response that said, it was a form response that said, we've heard your message, we'll take it into consideration, and it was the same message that everybody else got back, I think I'd be a little annoyed. But that's how I view these things.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because one of the responses that you get is the constant problem of communication, how to improve it. Every council member that comes on talks about we're going to improve, every school board member. And I think automatic responses and canned responses are the same thing to everybody. doesn't look very warm and fuzzy or friendly or inviting.
Thank you. And Liam?
Yeah, I don't disagree with Betsy and Richard. I mean, I guess what I would say, I think the risk, I think the thing to get across is a few things. One, I think that people need to understand that their comment or their question's been received. I think they should understand a little bit about the process, that it will be referred to the entire committee, or it's been received by the entire committee and will be referred as appropriate to either the full committee or subcommittee. So that's sort of the process. To the degree that's what they want for involvement. I'm fine if we have a section that says, you know, when it's received by the committee member may of their own free will sort of reach out or engage, or maybe they can do that on their own volition. I tend to, I mean, but I hear the comments from Richard and Betsy and I agree. I mean, this is a citizens committee where you're tasked with, in many respects, you know, representing the thoughts of your constituents. And so, but I think the risk is we don't want to make, you know, we want to make sure there is a consistent message, at least out of the gate. We want to make sure that people are responded to, and we want to make sure people understand the process. Outside of that, you know, I think there's probably an opportunity to do both.
Yeah, I believe, just for my choice, I believe I don't think anyone's stopping anyone here from engaging with somebody on a conversation. I just think it needs to be known that, you know, you're expressing your personal thoughts on an item and not speaking for the entire committee. I think my sense is, if we have, I mean, the question before us is, if we get a public comment in via email through town staff or something, how are we responding or acknowledging that we're receiving them? And again, I'm going to go back to, I think we should have the canned response that points them to one way. I don't think we as individual members need to feel obligated to all chime in on a member of the public's thoughts on the subject. I think it's just, let's acknowledge it. It's going to end up in, I mean, I think the public should, you know, any public comment person that's presented something should know that we will take their idea and debate it, whether it's in the full committee or whether through the subcommittees. And I don't think, you know, kind of a standard canned response for something that comes in through town hall or submitted from one of the counselors on behalf of one of the residents they spoke to, you know, at least acknowledging, and that's all. I think that's all I'm after here tonight. I'm not trying to impose gag orders, but I think we also just need to be careful, as Liam noted, that, you know, make sure you're speaking on, you know, behalf of yourself, not the full committee. And then, you know, we did have a situation where somebody sent something in, and I saw a couple different responses come through. I don't know how good that looks either. So I think we'll work on, you know, my 2 cents is, I'll work on a canned response with Liam, that if something comes in through the office, we at least let them know how the process works, where it goes, and that they can expect that their idea will be debated here in some form or another. And then if you are receiving emails individually, you know, it would be best if you're sharing them with the committee, at least I would say initially, based off of what Liam has told us with FOIA. So, sound fair, Allison?
Yeah, just for clarification, when you say something comes in through the office, do you mean something comes in through the group email that's coming to the committee, or it's something that's directed, say, through Tom and Liam's office?
It could be coming in through the website, for instance, or maybe somebody drops by at town hall and talks with them and gives them an idea of something that they wanted, and they pass it along to us, you know, something in that nature, at least acknowledging it.
Yeah, well, and what I was going to say is, I mean, I can appreciate the need to have a, you know, boilerplate, hopefully a little warm and fuzzy. But I think that if people take the time and the interest to reach out the committee directly, that whatever the boilerplate response is perhaps comes from you or comes from the committee, so that doesn't feel deflected. Then if something is coming in through, say, you know, the town manager's office, and if they have a response to, you know, to respond to say they're going to share it with the Charter Review Committee and a little bit about the process, then I just think that if something's coming into us and it gets deflected and answered elsewhere, I think that would also be off-putting.
Well, thank you. Mike, what I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, let me find the mute button.
You did it.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to answering citizens' inquiries, of course. I think what I'm going to do, though, is I want to make sure that I stay within the charge that has been given us, because I think we all know that we can receive commentary from others that would be outside our scope, and I think that could be a little dicey. If that's the case, I think I'll just forward them on to Liam or Tony or yourself, Nick. But as far as inquiries as it's related to why we're here, I don't hesitate to provide an answer and share it with the group.
Thanks. So let's start. I guess the general question I just like to start with is, are we all comfortable with at least me operating with Liam on developing a standard response to public comments received either through website or some general source? Are we all comfortable with that process? And then if any of you receive an email from a concerned citizen, you're of course free to respond. Just make sure you know you're not speaking on behalf of the entire committee, I think would be my only set of guidance there. Does that seem fair?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll move that along. All right. Next item on tonight's agenda is the public outreach aspect of this. So we have had some people comment that they were worried that the public outreach maybe isn't as exhaustive or as extensive as they would like it to be. So I wanted to at least float an idea by you, and Liam, I think probably could provide a little history of how outreach has gone thus far. My thought after Liam gives us a little synopsis is I'd be happy to, if you guys were all comfortable with it, write a little article to the leader just saying, here's the work we're doing, here's here's when our meetings are, here's a little bit about the process, here are your opportunities to participate as a member of the public. And pretty, try not to make it overly boring, but at least informative and maybe get it into the paper again. But Liam, do you want to go over real quick, maybe some of the outreach efforts thus far?
Yeah, sure. So I think just to perhaps remind the committee, we started really advertising. I mean, the discussions about the charter review go back, I think, farther than this, and obviously it's reflected in the charter that's subject to a review every 10 years. But I believe that Councillor Gleistein and myself and Tom Hall met actually, I think back in August initially to start working on a charge for the committee. And we started advertising back in September. And so at that point, the charge for what the purpose of this committee work was going to be was advertised and put out there. Since then, we've done a number of e-newsletter and social media updates on trying to solicit input for the committee. Of course, all of you found that somehow. And we've actually had 2 e-newsletter articles, one by Chair Johnson back in November, kind of rolling out that the work was starting. And then again, back in January, not that long ago, by Councillor Anderson, highlighting when we meet, or when the committee meets rather, again, what their charge is. So I think there's been, I think there was also a leader article at the same time. So I think there's been a fair amount of promotion that this committee is underway or going to have gotten started. I certainly think that message can continue. I think we will continue to see e-newsletter updates and updates on social media. And I really like the chair's idea about another article so we can make sure that this is as front and center as we can get it in all the platforms we have. So dating back to September, and I think with some regularity right along through.
So is it appropriate, and maybe it's being done, but the people that are really interested in what the council's doing and watch it with regularity, they would be more likely to be interested in this process. So as it announced at every meeting, don't forget, or they're working and here's how you get a hold of them, or something like they do, like councilors do at the end of the meeting?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Betsy has her hand up. Maybe she can chime in a little. Betsy?
No, that's a great thought, Annalee. We might even could add it as a regular agenda item, since we have 2 ad hoc committees running, just to have the chair kind of remind everybody, get out there and look, because by the time we talk at the end, people are usually pretty sick of hearing us. So I think most people have tuned out. Yeah, and I'm going out on a limb here, Liam, so we can cut this off, but the thing that we've been told is very popular from the Facebook standpoint, for some reason, that gets people interested in something. If some folks on the committee might volunteer to do a video, we did them just using Zoom. You know, you kind of don't want to be super boring, and it's going to take everybody's time, and maybe people are too busy, but apparently when Allison and folks post a video on Facebook, it gets more attention than just the articles a lot of times. So just putting that out there as an idea. If anybody's interested in doing that, maybe drop Liam an email or something. You know, it can be kind of fun or, you know, informative, or, you know, but if you want to get a little more zing and a little more attention, apparently that helps.
I can tell you from marketing, real estate marketing, that that's true. Videos do draw a lot more attention, as long as it can get through the Facebook people. So.
Thanks. Yeah, and I don't, how big is the budget for our advertising campaign, Liam?
You let me know what the needs are. We'll see what we can.
Yeah, you don't need to boost them. It'll boost itself. Trust me.
All right. Well, there's a good thought. Well, we'll have to select some stars from the committee to be featured in those. And for the time being, are we good with a Scarborough Leader article from the chair?
Mary, I think Mary has her hand.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just had one other question. I think Betsy might have mentioned it. I don't know if this is within our charge, but I know like the roundtables, like would that be possible to do some kind of roundtable with the public, or is that beyond our purview? I wasn't sure if that would be something that might
It's not
be.
beyond your purview. I don't know. You'll have to figure out when it's appropriate. We did task the committee with figuring out. I mean, I guess our thought more was, okay, you know, it's going to be complicated. Even when you guys get all the way through all this work, the voters have got to be educated to undertake referendum questions at the ballot. So, so I guess just be thinking about that. You know, roundtables are sometimes good for that. But yeah, you're free to, all of that would be publicity and educating the public, which is what we hope to get information from this committee. Even if you don't do it all yourselves, you know, what you're recommending that we do.
Yeah, and remember that with COVID, we can't do in-person roundtables, or you shouldn't, in my opinion. So it does get a little, you know, it's not a bad idea, or just have set aside some meeting where it's just for public input. You know, it's like having a hearing or whatever online. So that's not necessarily a bad idea.
Yeah, you know, and I think that it is a good idea. My preference to go out and maybe, you know, quote unquote, advertise something in that sense, and then try to hold a meeting specifically designed for greater public feedback on a document would be after we've done a lot of the work to propose language changes. And I say that because you want to give them an overview of what we have and what we've worked on, what we're proposing on sending to the council for changes, and then maybe have the public comment as to what they think about what we've done thus far, which may give us another opportunity to bring it back before we officially send it off to council. And I think we also need to keep in the back of our minds that council is going to do a couple of public readings. They're more likely than not going to have some changes. And I suspect it's even possible they might even send it back to us for more work after we have their input. So this is quite a lengthy process. It is going to involve multiple areas where the public can be involved. But I think for our benefit, my preference would be to do a roundtable type of discussion after we've done the bulk of our work and have our language locked down for what we're thinking on our end, at least. Any thoughts on waiting to that point in time to try to make a real big push for a quote unquote roundtable discussion?
For me, it makes sense because then the public sees where it's really going. And for many, it might be going all in the right direction.
I think it's easier to digest because you've got something to comment on versus just the whole thing. So I think it, I think it makes sense.
Nick, Leanne has her hand up.
Leanne?
I was going to ask Jean Marie if it's something that the council could actually host a forum as well. That happens a lot with first readings or like a public hearing. So we could have our piece before it actually gets to council, and then council could host something as well to get that feedback.
Yes, but I would say I would agree with Nick. I would want public input when we've got a little more solid, whatever.
I'm thinking both.
But I don't want to commit the council, obviously, because there is a long process that does go through the council, and to be honest with you, you could do all this work and the council may vote down everything and say, nah, we're not going to change charter at all. I'm not saying that we do that, but just keep that in mind too, okay? Or there may be bits and pieces that won't make it even through the council process. So yeah, the more you can socialize it, as we call it, and get people, I lost my earpiece here, and get people informed about what's going on, the better. So.
Great. Okay. Any other thoughts on that part of it? No? All right. So I'll just suggest that once we have a more completed document, that we'll look at ways to engage the public through roundtable discussions prior to it being forwarded to council. And that way we can kind of do our own little roundtable before the council engages in theirs. Does that sound fair? All right. Excellent. Thank you. So we're going to get into subcommittee reports, item number 5. And I just want to make a quick note on the subcommittee reports. I know there was a little bit of question as to what roles or what the expectation was coming out of a subcommittee back to the full committee. And I wanted to clarify, I do believe that we are looking, as we, and I say we as in the full committee, should be expecting from our subcommittees either specific language changes to certain sections or removal of specific changes, at a bare minimum, a solid direction for this full committee to take basically a position has been taken, and that is what the full committee debates. So being able to provide that to this full committee will help narrow some of our discussion and debate as to some of that more detailed debate should be happening in our subcommittees. And I don't know if I've made that fully clear. Does anyone understand that expectation, which is if somebody was going to, and I'm picking on this section, I know we'll be talking about it tonight, but if we were going to do counselor salary, I would want to see the subcommittee come forth and say, we're proposing $2,500 per year for a city councilor.
What happened to 20,000?
There was a slight reduction. But if that was the, that's what I want to see come from the subcommittee. That way, when it gets to full committee, we know exactly what we're debating. And at that point in time, we can amend from there as a full committee. So just because subcommittee says, yeah, we're recommending 2,500, this full committee, after a debate, at least we have the language, we have the number the subcommittee wanted, but we still have that opportunity to weigh in and make our adjustments as a full committee. But at least give us that springboard, give us that dropping off point where it's not kind of wishy-washy as to what it is we're supposed to be debating. Does that make sense, everyone? Mr. Stevenson.
I think my only comment there, Nick, and I think you and I are on the same subcommittee, so I think I get what our charge is with the topics have been laid before us. You just happen to have picked one that's not a subcommittee discussion. That's a full committee discussion, but other than that, I think I'm clear.
Yeah, no, I'm just using it as an example, right? Yeah. Yes, Richard.
I mean, I think that's an ideal, to have the subcommittee bring back a solid recommendation, but there may be some issues in which there's a divided opinion in the subcommittee. And I think, we still have to bring that back to the committee, but it's going to come back with option A or option B. And it may not be resolvable, or it may be 2-1 or 1-1-1 or some vote. And I think the full committee still has to deal with it. So subject to the fact that not everything might be unanimous out of the subcommittee, I'm with you, but I just want you to recognize that that's a possibility.
You should at least have a majority of opinion, a 2-1 vote for something coming back to this committee.
If it splits nicely as 2-1, sure, but I mean, just takes that. There might be an issue, for instance, in our subcommittee with respect to one question that's been raised about if the council doesn't approve a budget. Do you revert back to last year's budget, or do you take the one that's the council or the town manager has proposed? I mean, I can see that issue splitting a subcommittee and having a difference of opinion and bringing both back to the full committee and say, how do you want to think about it?
I think, Richard, that's a perfect example of we would take your majority vote. So I got to believe 2 people will get on the same page, make the recommendation as full committee. But that debate that we have as a full committee will still incorporate that minority opinion at some level, where that will be a point of discussion. But at least we would have that jumping off point on the 2-1 majority vote on which way to change it. It might turn out those are the only 2 votes in this entire committee that are supportive of the change that come out of subcommittee. However, at least it's the springboard for our discussion. That's what I'm driving at.
As you just described it, I'm fine. I didn't understand that last part, but that's fine.
All right, thanks, Richard. Anyone else? Okay, so with that, let's go to the subcommittee reports. Subcommittee 1, Mr. Wood.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, Karen and myself and Mary met last week, and we deliberated over the areas that we were charged with, 3, 5, and 7. And then we adjourned, hoping to meet earlier this week before this committee, to discuss 9, those areas of 9 that we were charged with. But due to circumstances beyond our control, we couldn't meet. So at that meeting that we could not put together, we were going to do a summation. So I'm going to have to ask the full committee to wait till our next full meeting to give you a proper summation of what we've covered so far.
All right, thank you. Are you finding the dialogue pretty good at this point?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, it's very good. The committee is small, which is nice. And well, I'll let Karen and Mary speak to that as well.
No, they look like they're satisfied.
No, everything's going well for me. I think we're at a point where I think we're kind of bringing ideas, but we haven't solidified things like Mike had said. So I think it's a good process.
Good. All right, subcommittee 2, Mike.
So what I decided to do in terms of a format for our meeting, we had a meeting a week ago, a 1-hour meeting, started at 9, finished at 10 as we planned. What I did was I extracted the topics that were part of our charge from the main list of topics, from the original or the second list, I think, that you sent out, Liam. So I created Subcommittee 2 tracker, and I also extracted from Liam's version 2 all the questions that we were going to focus on. Of course, what I didn't incorporate were Nick's questions. So his first observation was, what happened to mine? And I apologized, and I've added them now to the tracker. I think we found that it allowed us to move fairly quickly through the topics at hand. And if you cast your eyes over the spreadsheet that Liam put together, the very first of our topics appears on page 2. So I think Liam, you've got some of those topics allocated to subcommittees that are not actually going to be allocated to subcommittees. So it's most of the way down page 2 till we get to one that subcommittee 2 is actually looking at. But we actually got through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 topics. Some of them were topics that and suggestions and questions and observations that were made about the same point by multiple people. So in some cases, I commented, and so did Mike Wood, and so did Mary Starr and myself on those. So I think we came through there with a good feeling of unanimous decisions not to take them to main committee, because we felt in most cases that the wording within the current charter was fairly clear. Obviously, they can all go back and be redebated, but I think we made some good progress. I think it resulted in one new question that I think Alison needs to submit. And then we finished up on a question 212 right at the end that we decided that we'd hold over to the next committee meeting, which is planned for next Thursday at 9 a.m. So I think all in all, we made some good progress.
Thanks, Mike. Anna Lee Rosenblatt, subcommittee number 3. And you're on mute, just so you know.
So as secretary, I just want to go back to Mike Wood. You had said that you were working on 3, 5, and 7, and you didn't get to 9, but committee 3 is working on 5. Did you misspeak?
Maybe I did.
Because I have you down for 3, 7, 9, and something else. So for my notes, I just want to be as accurate as I can. So look about that. I'll make a report for subcommittee 3, and maybe you could look that up for me. I'd appreciate it. So subcommittee 3 were assigned number 1. Yeah, I have that sheet. I just want to record his report. So we had numbers 1, 5, and 6. We've actually met 4 times, 2 times this week and 2 times last week. And we have gotten through all of what we were assigned. We've considered any requests, comments that came in from others as well as our own. We went back to 2 of the people that made suggestions for further clarification. Richard was making contact with one. I was making contact with another because we didn't quite understand what their comments were about. And we have another meeting scheduled where we hope that we can resolve those questions and wrap up our discussion, because 1 isn't very meaty. If you've noticed it, it was just an introduction.
Great. Thank you, Anna Lee.
And Anna Lee, I did misspeak. It is 3, 7, and 9, and 10.
Okay, so it's 10 that you need to meet about for later.
No, we discussed 3 and 7, and we adjourned knowing that 9 was quite substantive.
Okay.
Going to take up some time, and we
Great.
have not discussed 10 yet.
Let me just, I had 9, so I just got the notes straightened out. Thanks. All right.
All right. Our next item of business this evening is public comment. I wanted to just kind of throw a little section here for anyone that might be in attendance or was looking to make public comment. I don't see anyone other than our committee members here in attendance. So
is there any, Liam, any public? Would we see them, by the way, on our screen?
I don't know what you see. I can see, I would see them under attendees, and we have no attendees.
Okay.
Right. We just have our 14 panelists. So, all right. So with that, I'll close public comment. We're going to try to do our best here to see what we can get through here this evening, but we have Articles 2 and 4 before us. And these were retained by the full committee for discussion. And they do go hand in hand to a large extent, I think, at least in my mind. If we're looking to change, the terms and whatnot of a town council member, it probably would go hand in hand with the board. I don't know that for a fact, but I think some of our discussion is probably going to find some great parallels between the two articles. So with that, we'll just kick off with the first section, Article 2, Section 201, which currently reads, number, term, election, and term. The town council should be composed of 7 members who shall be nominated and elected by the registered voters of the entire town, according to the provisions of this charter, for a term of 3 years, and who shall serve until their successors are elected and qualified. All right, so before this becomes a free-for-all, I would like us to kind of work on, if we have our tracker sheet, and I don't know if that's something that we all have up in front of us, or if maybe that's something that Liam can have on a shared screen. If we have a tracker sheet, we can kind of hopefully see some of the comments that have come in on that section. I've got several here, and I can just kind of read them one at a time if you like, and we'll go through them in that manner. So suggestion 1 for that, I'm just going to read the comment. It came from Stevenson. It says, given the geographical size of the town, the size of the ever-growing population, and the diverse cultures and needs across the town, we really need to have wards. Given the limited budgets available, we need town councilors who know their voters and the needs of the voters. Whilst it does not state that they are charged with representing the voters, I believe they are correct. They are, correct me if this is not the case. How can they be if they don't know who they are and our needs, and we don't know them if it really fails at the first hurdle? In all my years in Scarborough, I have never been approached by any member of the council, nor have I ever received any form of communication from any of them, with the exception of Jean Marie Caterina. I know for a fact when lobbying for support at upcoming elections, the favorite place to go meet as many people as possible in the shortest possible time is Pleasant Hill. So to summarize 2 points here, wards, first of all, and secondly, a charge to represent the voters by meeting with and understanding their local needs via all the obvious communication channels and workshops. I'm not sure we need 7 wards, but to have 7 at large does not make sense to me at all. Maybe 5 and 2. Some of the towns who have wards and who have charters I've reviewed divide their towns into wards or relatively equal numbers of voters or inhabitants. Cannot tell which. Falmouth has wards, as does Saco, Wyndham, Biddeford, Westbrook, Brunswick, Sanford, but to name a few. Okay, that is a comment. This goes hand in hand with a comment from Bristol, which was a mix of at-large and by district members. And obviously there's another one here. We'll take that one separately. I think we have another recommended to establish a ward or district system for the town council. And I think that's the first topic we'll take up. I see it there, and I believe that's all of them. So
There's other comments on the sheet.
there's definitely more comments, but I think that's the
okay.
first question and meaty enough for all of us to kind of take up one at a time.
Oh,
here.
by categories. I see what you're doing. All right.
So I think the first question to this board is, how do we feel about wards? And that would be a yes, we need to explore a ward system, or no, I don't believe we need to. As far as getting into the numbers, let's leave that to a later discussion based on whether or not we want the wards in the first place. So I'll kick off real quick and just give you my thoughts. You can make the argument both ways. The wards sound nice from the sense of you have a smaller district, you have a representative that you might get to know a little easier. I do see a lot of challenges with a system like that. First of all, it would require us to establish lines in the sand. Basically, how do you go about selecting your district lines? Would there be another committee needed? Would that be an elected committee, an appointed committee? How frequently would they meet? What kind of criteria? I think as far as a fiscal standpoint, I think you could argue that the municipal side would see an increase in their needs for, either whether it be through ballots or hours to implement an election system like that. None of these things are impossible to do. I just think that comes with a handful of side effects that we'd have to, or ramifications that we'd have to also deal with if we did it. My last thought on that would be, I do worry about getting more partisan in this town, and I think this might open that door as to who sits to draw lines. I really enjoy the fact that we have nonpartisan elections here, and I like the idea that every counselor we have representing us is representing all of us. Not like the fractionalization. I think that might hurt us in some areas. Those are my personal thoughts. Anyone want to jump in next? Richard.
Mike, this is Rich. I just have a question. I've never paid much attention to wards where I've lived. I've never had them. Are there rules governing equal representation? I mean, do the wards have to represent the same number of people, or do you run into constitutional issues? And do they get adjusted based on every 10-year census like congressional districts? I mean, do people know how that ward system works generally? And if so, could you just explain it quickly? Anybody?
I mean, I'd weigh in with the thought that if you had a district that had a smaller population number not equal to the other districts around it, you're opening yourself up for a huge issue. I mean, that they'd have to be equal representation in some respect.
In Portland, for instance, does every 10 years do the ward boundaries change based on the census?
Yeah, I'm not sure how often they change them in Portland, but yes, the district lines get changed. And my assumption is probably with the census, because that seems to make the most sense. I'll put my 2 cents worth in as a counselor now serving start of my 3rd term. I don't, and Mike knows this because he and I've had this discussion several times. I happen to not believe in cutting us up as districts. I think that as counselors, it's much, it's better to represent everybody. I think there's less friction, there's less people saying, well, you know, down in Higgins Beach, and that's who I represent, and that's all I represent. Nothing personal, Allison. But I have to broaden my horizons as a counselor and pay attention to the whole town. The other 2 other things that I would say is we have trouble getting people to run as it is now. Trying to get people to run because you can only live in North Scarborough, or you can only live in Pine Point, or wherever the districts are, makes it a little more difficult. And you will see counselors running unopposed. You see that in Portland, you see that in Westbrook, you see that in South Portland with their districts. So are you really, you know, are you getting good conversations and dialogue going between candidates when you do that? And then number 3, looking at Tody, frankly, having wards or districts is a potential nightmare from an election point of view. Ballots, producing ballots, it's costly. So those are the 3 reasons that I would say, no, I don't think we need them. We're not at that. We're not that big. We are big from a Maine point of view, but not from, you know, a general point of view for politics. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
Thanks, Jean Marie. I have Betsy with her hand up.
Well, I'm happy to let someone else go because I know we get a say later. I think one of the points here that I would kind of like to make is I do have an opinion on this, and I'm happy to share it. But I think part of the thing we want the committee to do is to determine if this should go to the voters. Do we have, you know, enough number of people who have an interest in this that this should go out and let the voters decide, so that a topic this important is not, you know, just the committee or even the chair and even the council, because I think the council will end up having a level of that debate too, you know. So when we get to something, instead of just shutting it down, somebody might say, well, let's let the voters decide. So so I think that's, you know, you kind of want to have that as an important part of the discussion. My personal opinion, you know, we represent twice as many people as your state reps do. Over 20,000 now. I would definitely not be for all 7 to be from wards. I would probably be three wards and 4 at large. But I think, you talked about representing the town. The way it is now, you could easily have, okay, here, I'll pick on Higgins Beach. Why not? It's easy. You could have 2 or 3 counselors, who live in Higgins Beach because they happen to be interested that year in running. And that's the way that it comes out. And there was nobody, that won from North Scarborough. So, there's always pros and cons to this, but, as an elected official, I'd love to go to everyone's door. And if I ran an award, I definitely would do that. In a town of our size, it is not possible to go to all the doors in Scarborough. And
Yeah,
it is
you can. Yes,
the
you
size
can.
of
But anyway,
it's the size of Maine. I'm sorry, was somebody talking? Maybe I'm.
yeah,
on
oh
mute.
yeah, well, it was me. You can go to all the doors of most of them, but that's another story.
Okay. I went to thousands, but yeah, I couldn't get to all 8,500 households. So anyway, yeah, I think it would, everybody on the council, even if you only represented North Scarborough, say, would still vote as an equal member. So I feel like we'd still get representation. And it's just the size we are now. I think people need to be able to connect with their representative and the at-large representatives as well. And yeah, there's challenges to it for sure from election standpoint. But it's probably just one of those things that I think it's time to let the voters weigh in on it. And if the voters of Scarborough feel the way some of the speakers felt tonight, then it'll get voted down. And if they don't, it won't. So yeah, the only other thing I would say is to some of the questions, this would be one of our trickier ones to put forward. So I think we would probably need help right away if we were to say, yeah, we're going to at least take something forward on it, to even legal help to figure out how that would look as what we would take forward, because it's probably the trickiest thing or the most complicated thing that we would consider. Sorry, I feel like I went on too long. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Betsy. I mean, I think that I think you've made a good point as to whether or not this is a question voters should be discussing. Appreciate that. I'm gonna hear from Leanne next, just so we get all of our elected folks out of the way, and then we'll get the committee in. Go ahead, Leanne.
I was just going to ask if the intention would be, if wards was something that was happening, is it automatically looking as though the board would be part of that as well? Personally, I'm kind of hoping that's not the case. I think that looking at it across the entire district is incredibly important, and not to be so locked into just one section of Scarborough. But if we're going to take it to the voters, can we get input from Tody? Can we find out what the costs are for doing this? Because we'll need to have somebody come in to do the districting. We would need to know how much it's going to cost for the balloting, and all of that will cost. We need to weigh out and make sure the voters are aware of what it's going to, how it will impact the budget year over year.
Thanks, Leanne. Next, I have Anna Lee with her hand up.
Sure, thanks. So I thought a lot about this the last time we did the charter. We talked about this topic then as well, when Scarborough was smaller. And I think I'm leaning against the idea. I at one time had supported it, but we have to decide as a town where we're going. The one town, one budget. Are we going to be one town, one council, one town, one school board, or are we going to be 3 towns and 4 towns? Certainly it would have to be by population. It would not be fair under one man, one vote to have somebody represent 5,000, someone else 500. I know I've lived here long enough to know my legislative district has changed at least three times, if not 4. I used to be in a Senate district that included part of Saco and Old Orchard Beach. Now I'm in Gorham and Bar Mills, or Buxton, I guess it is. And Scarborough now, I used to be part of Cape Elizabeth and part of South Portland in my Senate district, and I've moved to the other side of town. So I'm not sure that for at least the long term, that's a good idea. You develop a relationship with these folks and then they're not your representative anymore. They go away and you have a new bunch of folks, and maybe that's okay. But generally, I'm not supportive of it because it wouldn't be permanent. It would definitely have to be changed periodically. And I think somebody else said it, probably when the legislative district changes, that's when the census is done, and that would be the best time, among the other kinds of complications that come. You know, when I was on school board, I felt I represented the whole town, not my neighborhood. And I'm kind of leaning towards the whole town and not the neighborhood in terms of what to support.
Thanks, Annalee. Liam, you have a point of clarification for us?
Just actually, I wanted to bring up Mike Wood. Actually, when he submitted his comments, he did share a document that put together some pros and cons of this. I just want to pull up quickly. I'll email it out to the group, but I'm having a hard time doing that right now. So let me just give you an idea. But it was and Mike, I don't know if you want to speak to this or not, but it was a town in Ontario that went through some analysis and discussion around the differences between the twos and the pros and cons. So that might be some good information for the group to digest between meetings, assuming that we don't come to a conclusion on it tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, Liam. Yeah, this document is, I think, on the shared drive, is it not?
It may very well be. If it's not, it will be.
I think it is. Anyway, you're sharing it, but I would invite folks just to look at this. And I'm not necessarily prepared to make take a position one way or the other, but this is a study that was done about a year ago or so for a town called Aurora. Population was about 50,000, 60,000. And I just found it interesting because I think it effectively lists, it's a short document, easy read, and it listed advantages and disadvantages of both systems. So I just thought it would be helpful as the group collects its thoughts. My initial opinion, since I have the mic, I guess, and I appreciate that, is that I'm not warm and fuzzy about a ward scenario. I understand that there are some advantages to it, but in this day and age, I guess I'm just oversensitive to the particular or the potential for fractioning and partisanship. And I'm just seeing too much of that in the last couple of years that I'm just afraid that this would create a similar effect over time. But I can be convinced either way. And to Betsy's point, this committee, this is one of the questions, this is part of the charter as it exists, and certainly we want to discuss it and deliberate on it and maybe make an opinion to the council on it. And I think I'm not wrong in saying that any part of the charter, not every 10 years, but any part of the charter can be brought up for debate and vote by actions of the council. So even a year or two from now, regardless of what happens with our work, the council might elect to bring this forth for the citizens to vote on. So I think that it's important that this committee does make an opinion and forward it on to the council one way or the other. But I invite you to take a look at the document, and if you have anything else that you can share with the group that would help us through this complicated question, I certainly would appreciate it as well.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you,
Richard.
Well, Mike hit on something that I was going to ask. When you look at section 1007 of the charter, it specifies that amendments to this charter may be proposed and enacted in accordance with the general laws of the state of Maine. I did a quick search. I couldn't find anything, but my search might not have been on the right topics. But does anybody know how the charter can be amended? Is it by a citizen's 25 signed petition? Is it only by virtue of the council making the recommendation?
Richard, it's really complicated, but there is a citizen's way to do it. There's a council way to do it. But it is complicated. I'm not sure you want to go into the weeds with that, but Mike in general is right. There is other ways. Our charter just requires this review every 10 years, but there's other ways that the charter can be reviewed, including a citizens initiative to bring forward a charter commission. So anyway, there's even more ways than that. So, and it depends on whether it's considered an amendment or a major change about what kind of the way you have to bring it forward. It's pretty interesting. We could probably cut it and paste it out of state law. There's some sections that are, we could put that out to the committee so people could read it.
That would be helpful, because I think your point, Betsy, about our charge, I mean, is our charge to present what we believe to be the right set of amendments, or is it to present things that we think the general citizen should vote on? And if there's an alternative way of amending this document and there's a path to do it, then I'm more inclined to think of the former as our charge. If there's no way, or if it's a very complicated or a way that's very difficult to do, then I'm inclined to think the second option should be part of our charge. So I think that would be helpful. If Liam, if you could do that, or Betsy, if you have it available, that would be useful.
Thanks, Richard. Karen, at one point I saw your hand up. You still want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jean Marie touched on a lot of the concerns that I had in regards to breaking Scarborough up and getting people to actually run. I feel like sometimes where I live in Pine Point, there might not be as much participation, and I'd be concerned about getting the right representation. Also, generally, when it comes to wards, I actually thought they were just associated with cities. I thought they were more associated with specifically in regards to population. So, you know, I appreciate that Mike had comments and he listed other cities who do wards, but those are cities. And I guess some of them are towns, but they're bigger. I personally thought they were associated with towns and cities that had bigger populations. I know Scarborough's a little more spread out, but as Jean Marie was saying, we don't always have as much participation and the numbers that we need to make that work.
Thanks, Karen. Any other thoughts on this topic, Mike?
Yeah, I don't want to hog the microphone, but Mike Wood was only the second person after Jean Marie that I've spoken to about this topic who was not actually in favor of it. I raised this a few years ago and was just referred back to the charter. I was told to read the charter by the then chairman of the town council, whereupon I responded and said, I have read the charter and I can see that it's in the charter to be amended every 10 years, but I can also see that amendments have been made within those 10-year periods. So my question again was, how do I do it? And I never got an answer. And I think we need an answer. It needs to be in the charter. To Karen's point, the towns that I listed, whether they're cities or towns, I don't really care. They're all about 20,000 people. So I think from a size point of view, we're certainly more geographically spread out and therefore geographically more diverse, I think. But they are all similar sizes. And I liked Betsy's comment, I think, about the fact that, you know, maybe we just need to take some of these things to the town and put it to the vote. I mean, I know, for example, within the current charter, I only need 20 names on a petition to recall somebody. Well, I can get you 100 names on a petition, at least in very short order, that says we should at least consider wards. I was thinking 7 when I originally proposed it. Certainly the counter proposals or the considerations for splitting that up into, you know, three or 4 wards and the balance at large, I could see make a lot more sense and be more palatable. I don't know whether they need to be exactly equal. I think if you're standing for a ward against someone else who's challenging you, then the same number of voters I would have thought would be voting for you, if only the voters in that territory can vote for a councillor in a ward. But I don't know how it works. But that's my additional, if you like, support for it.
Thanks. I did see Allison with her hand up.
Yes, I have a opinion and a question. So I tend to agree with Betsy on this, and that I think it would be a good idea to have a mix of at-large and wards. And then I'm assuming just say we had 7 counselors and it's 4 at large and 3 wards, that 3 wards would then be determined within Scarborough by population. This is what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong. So the question is, if we put this forward to the voters in a referendum, do we also have to make a recommendation as to what those wards would be?
So, thanks, Allison. I think, and Liam or anyone else care to jump in and correct me if they feel I'm wrong in stating this. I believe our charge is to make a recommendation to the town council on this charter. And so while I really appreciate the idea that, you know, we should be maybe talking about putting a topic like this out to the voters, I'm just not sure how that works unless we change this document and have that recommendation written into the document. I think that's our charge. We're supposed to hand the council something to digest and vote on and discuss. So, you know, I think we need to get past the first threshold discussion, which is, are we in favor of recommending a ward system over just the overall current system we have? I think that's the threshold question. And if we can't, we as a committee either have to send that one way or the other before we even get down the road of how many districts are we talking about, and how are those appropriated, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to, you know, and please, anyone with some authority on that subject, please feel free to correct me. But my opinion is we got to get over this threshold of we have to recommend something to this council in this document. And I think the first step is deciding whether or not we want wards. So at least on this topic. Betsy, you've had your hand up for a little while.
I think Mary had her hand up before me.
Okay, Mary.
Okay. So I'm still thinking about it right now, but I think I probably lean towards a no on the ward system. I do work in Saco, and so they have a ward system. You know, it's a city, and I know, I think at the last election, I don't even know if there was anyone that was opposed for the council. I think that for the most part there weren't enough people. So I am concerned about that. And I share Leanne's concern about, I think knowing the cost of it, I think is important. I think also from the election side, I work in the clerk's office. I know there's confusion when you have some wards might have an election and then other wards don't have an election, and that, you know, so you have different ballots. So I know from that side that can be confusing for voters to say, wait, I didn't get the ballot I was supposed to get. You know, I mean, it can be overcome, but I know that is something that happens. So right now I would lean against it. And I also do worry about the town dividing as well. So I think I like the system as right now, but I'm open to listening definitely to different ideas. So
Thanks, Mary. Betsy.
Oh, yeah. So, you know, I do think, you know, the council, I mean, this committee, you know, could definitely, despite public opinions, could just say, you know, I've heard from 10 people that really want us to vote on wards, regardless. So as citizens, you will all get your chance to vote on the referendum, as will I and everyone else. So, you know, I think I'm not sure the threshold question is what you're saying, Nick. I'm not sure I agree with that. And I'm not sure the committee, you know, has the background. And Mike gave some information to say right now, well, we're going to take a vote and the answer is no. And then I think we've probably maybe overlooked a little bit of the complexity, which Leanne brought up, which is, and again, whether or not we'd want to take it to the voters is a different question, but I know I personally would not be for wards for the school board. I think the school board should stay the way it is. So I think most of the discussion has been around the town council, but I'm not sure that we actually broke that up. So I do think, you know, the committee could say, you know, you're supposed to bring forward ideas of not what you think should pass. I mean, this is my personal opinion, but, you know, what you think should go before the voters, you know, that needs, you know, is worth putting on the referendum. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Jean Marie.
Sorry about that. I think Anna Lee had her hand up before I did.
Anna Lee.
It doesn't matter. I was also going back to read the charge, so I hadn't thought about that, but it's something we ought to read because it definitely says we make our presentation to the council, not to the
Right.
public. And the council, I think, worded this thing, and I think that, you know, Betsy, that you were in charge of doing that. So that's what it says. It doesn't say put out some flyers for people to vote on. But I also heard at least one member who's pretty thoughtful, said, what are other ways to do it? And I'm not sure. I mean, I'm prepared to vote, but I don't think the committee is prepared to vote on this one issue. Somebody's asked for a little bit more information about other ways to amend the charter. And I don't know what that is. I would be interested in finding out. It might make a difference if this is the only way versus others. So I would suggest we're not ready to make a decision about this.
Thanks, Annalee. I quickly want to read from our charge. This is item number 2 under deliverable.
Yeah,
It says the
that's what I read.
CRC shall present its recommendations in the form of specific proposed amendments to the charter. For clarity and understanding, the CRC is encouraged to provide a position statement or other explanatory information with the proposed amendment. Such recommendations will be offered in a public presentation to the town council. Town council retains the sole discretion to decide which, if any, of the recommended amendments shall be put to the voters for consideration and may offer both additional amendments and modifications to the CRC proposed amendments. In any event, all amendments to the charter must be approved by the voters. So very clearly, the council has asked us to write this language and send it to them. Jean Marie Caterina.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say, I'm glad you read that. The purpose of this committee is to report to the council on what your thoughts are. And the reason we chose the people we chose for this committee, at least in my opinion, and I think other counselors would back me up on this, is that we feel we've got a very diverse group of folks here who can weigh in. And it may be that you folks decide this is enough of interest to enough members of this committee that we want the town council to look at it. Secondly, I agree with Annalee in that we do have people who have some questions. I know I want to read what Mike Wood submitted. I mean, I don't get a vote on this, obviously. I'm just here, you know, as a liaison, but I think it would be helpful for folks to, you know, give this some thought, go back, and the next time we meet, you know, I don't know how, I guess I'm not sure how you are going to do your votes. You're going to do up, down votes. You're going to have split decisions. How are you going to deliver to the council? Obviously, if it's clear that people are like, nah, that's good, why would we change that? That's pretty clear. But on issues that need a bit more study or whatnot, you could even wait on it and say, well, let's put this one aside. We'll bring this up near the end. I don't know. But I know this has been, as Annalee said, this has come up in past charters, charter committees. It's been an ongoing discussion. And I think that people need, on this committee, need a little more time to digest it. But please know, as I mentioned before, that your job is to make recommendations to the council. And as I said, the council has the absolute right to say, we aren't going to bring anything forward to the voters. Not that I would suggest that we do that. I do know there are, as Betsy mentioned, there are many other ways for people to want, if they want to change the charter from the grassroots, from the bottom up. And that's something that perhaps, I don't know if we want the town attorney to weigh in on it. Costs money, obviously, to talk to the attorneys. But I'm just feeling tonight like this is such a big issue for folks and people need so much more information that my recommendation would be that we table this, to use a parliamentary term, and allow people to get more information, talk to one another, whatever you want to do, and then come back to this one. This is a big one.
Thanks, Jean Marie. I just do want to make one quick clarifying point for Leanne, who had asked the question. The discussion that we're currently having actually just focuses on the council, section 201. I know I said there at the start of this that there's some parallels between sections, Article 2 and Article 4. And I thought maybe those discussions would carry through to the one section to another, but specifically the discussion we're having right now only applies to 201. That's as far as I understand it. So Betsy, do you have anything to add in? And thank you, Jean Marie,
Yeah,
for
just
those
really quick,
thoughts.
I think this will be the toughest topic, and so I do think it's going to take some more time. I mean, I think, when you read the charge, you can bring something to council with a position statement. So if there's, a minority on the committee that, feel like this should really go forward to the voters, it's possible to have something structured and as a specific amendment, and then, maybe take a vote and report that out to the council to say, 6-3 did not think this should go to referendum. But, so I think the language is pretty clear. You can take a position statement. That does not mean it has to be positive or negative. And I do think this is a very complicated issue, complicated topic. And I think it needs more time. And I think eventually it's going to have to be structured. I don't think we can just talk about it at a high level. It's going to have to be structured to the point of where people decide, if they think the language should go to the voters or not.
Thank you. I'm okay tabling this for the evening, but I will say this, that when we know what we should be tackling for tonight and 2 weeks from now, basically we're almost to 8 o'clock already. Articles 2 and 4. So I think at my request of all of the members here, I want you guys to do some homework before we get into these meetings. I think use of the shared drive, if you have questions and you want answers prior to the upcoming meeting in 2 weeks, I'd ask that you please forward them to Liam so we can help get you information ahead of the meeting. Because I understand this is the first real attempt at dissecting a section as a full committee, where we want a little bit more time, and this is definitely a meaty subject. However, I think we do need to take some responsibility to do the best to educate ourselves on these topics as we go in. Always, of course, being open to the arguments and debates that we'll hear, including with public comment. But I do want to see this committee make progress. I don't think any of us should expect full consensus as we come out of the majority of these tough issues. I highly doubt any of it will be, but you heard the charge. We have to come forward with language, and sometimes that's going to look like a 5-4 vote. And I think we all need to accept it and not take it personally. But let's make sure that we're prepared to take these votes and understanding that everyone has all of the information at their fingertips. But let's try all of us collectively to get those questions in ahead of time, knowing that our agendas are going to be tight and full as they are. So, Leanne, saw your hand go up.
Just a question. Courtesy of school vacation next week, our school board meeting is going to fall on the same night as the charter meeting, where we're covering school board issues and council issues. Do you want me to send something to you and Liam in writing about where the board has landed on certain pieces, or how do you want to get that information? Because I won't be able to attend the meeting.
If I understand you correctly, you're saying your job on the school board is more important than the work we do here.
I'm kind of thinking maybe.
Yeah, if you can give us your thoughts, I think that would help. I really do. I mean, especially as the liaison. I would venture a guess that we don't get to Article 4 next time. Just a sneaking
Maybe.
suspicion, but just in case, we would love to have your comments in writing.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Leanne. Jean Marie.
Yeah, this is just a suggestion. I mean, I'm thinking, would it make more sense to bang down through things in the charter of with which people all agree? Now, I may be treading on thin ice, for example, like section 101 incorporation, municipal corporation by the name of Town of Scarborough. That's why we're a town and not a city, because that's how we're incorporated. It's got nothing to do with size or anything in the state of Maine under state. What's that?
Yeah, it has
What's that,
nothing to
Mike?
do with population.
Yeah, it's right. It's got to do with the way you're incorporated. But, you know, can we all agree, for example, oh, that's fine. That doesn't need to be looked at. Boom, done. You know what I'm saying? And I know you have the subcommittees working on various things that were supposedly less, what's the word I want? It's getting late in the day.
Controversial.
Thank you. Thank you. That they could report back and it would be fairly easier to do that. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just brainstorming with myself here.
Yeah, I think that's the goal, which is those subcommittees are kind of chewing through the minutia of this document, knowing that we can make good progress. And then I think the changes that come out of subcommittee as a recommendation, and then any changes that we develop as the full committee on these broader topics, we would try to incorporate into one full document. And then we'll have a debate again as to all of those recommended changes. That would be my vision for this. But yeah. Okay, anyone else on this one? I'm fine with tabling it. We can motion to table 201 for the evening pending some new information. Anyone like to make that motion?
I motion to table.
Do I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Any
Who said
discussion?
that? Richard, did you say second? No, who said second?
I said second.
Oh, Mike Wood, okay.
Any discussion? Richard, were you raising your hand for discussion?
To second it.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, roll call. Mike, yes. You have
Yeah, just
discussion?
a question. I don't know. I think that if we're going to bring this up, we're tabling it. And the thought is that I guess we're going to hear about this in a couple of weeks more. We're going to discuss it.
I think basically the motion should probably be to table our business of Article 2 and Article 4 for the evening.
Right.
For the 2-week period. Yeah, this will recur on in 2 weeks from now, will recur on our agenda.
So I think that I personally, and I think I could probably speak for most, if not all of us, to make a argument for or against a ward system or an at-large system, it would be nice to, just be prepared to make that argument, because I'm all ears. I mean, the document I submitted, I think is balanced. It doesn't conclude one or over the other. So I offered that to not only help myself, but to help others maybe just kind of frame the reasons why they might favor one over the other. So I would look forward to that kind of discussion.
So is that a friendly amendment that both section 2 and 4,
Article 2 and Article 4.
Article 2 and Article 4 are tabled for discussion at the next meeting?
Yeah, I'll make that
So-
motion for amendment. Yeah, sure.
Well, I was just saying maybe Alan could say that would be a friendly amendment and you're a friendly second, and you don't have to make two motions. That's all.
They're all friendly, Annalee.
Okay.
just at the start. Just wait till we're doing this in June.
Yeah, well, that's true. But, the people who read these carefully have comments. So I'm trying to be as precise as possible.
And I'm glad you're doing it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So if I understand, we have a motion to table the business sections for Article 2 and Article 4 for this evening for our meeting date 2 weeks from today. And the second was from Richard. Was from Michael Wood, right? Was the first?
Yes.
Was the motion made by Mike Stevenson? Did I have that correct?
Alan Foster made the
Alan
motion
Foster,
and
okay.
Mike Wood seconded.
Any further discussion on that? Okay. Roll call. Mike Stevenson. Alan Foster. Annalee Rosenblatt.
Yes.
Karen Shute.
Yes.
Mike Wood.
Yes.
Richard Silkman.
Yes.
Allison Bristol.
Yes.
Mary Starr.
Yes.
Nick McGee. Yes. Thank you, guys. Let's see. I've got, what do we have left on the agenda for this evening? Oh, we get to assign some things. Good. Sorry, I've got a million tabs open. Okay, so Assignment of business. Okay, so if we go back to our tracker, I know Liam added some public comment in here, some general sections. I just wanted to make sure that our public comment items are getting assigned to their respective subcommittees. So I believe everything that has been submitted from a what's been referred to as a CRC member, Charter Review Committee member, has been referred to at this point. And Liam, please correct me if I'm wrong. The items that have not been referred would be anything that's called PC, public comment. So we have a general comment about school labor contracts, have a first reading, which is I'm not sure exactly what section this would fall under, but it says municipal and school labor contracts. So I don't know if that is something necessarily where that would go. So I would say maybe we should retain this one in the fuller committee. Anyone have any thoughts on that one? I'll read the suggestions. It says require that all final municipal and school labor contracts have a first reading and no sooner than 14 days later a second reading at the town council or board of education as appropriate. Both readings shall provide an opportunity for public comment. This provision shall not be overridden by a suspension of the rules. That's the suggested language. I'm sorry if anyone have any thoughts on whether we should retain that as the full committee or assign it somewhere? I mean, I imagine that would be under the budget. I don't know if it's under the budget. Yes.
It may go under budget. I was going to suggest sending that back to Liam. Sorry, Liam. I think we need legal opinion on this one, where these are they're contractual. I don't know what rules apply from the state under the governance of how these contracts are written and when they can be communicated and all of that. I'd want to see what the lawyers had to say.
I agree with Leanne.
And there's an opinion out of town of Sanford, which I personally was involved in with regard to school departments and what can go to how this is working. So, I mean, if you want to assign it to our subcommittee, I do have some personal experience with this because it does need more legal review.
Would you guys be comfortable with assigning it to the subcommittee for more information and let them be the lead on gathering that information for the committee?
What section and article was it again?
See, that's the problem. It's a general suggestion. It's not tied into anything. So it's kind of it doesn't really have a home at this moment.
Right. Sure.
But I'd also heard that I believe it sounds like Anna Lee's committees, that's sub 3, they've chewed through most of their materials already. And, yes, need to go back and refine some language and suggestions, but may have a little bit of capacity at the moment. So would everyone be comfortable kind of referring to subcommittee 3 for follow-up and information gathering? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So as a suggestion, maybe all of these that aren't assigned, they're assigned to 0 because I guess you couldn't identify, nobody identified a section. There's not that many. I don't mind. I could ask Alan and Richard how they feel, us taking an initial look at this, because we've been meeting a lot more often and seeing where it should go, if at all. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 of them, and they're not that long.
Well, I was more or less worried about the 1, 2. I mean, I showed 2 from the public that kind of came in with no assigned article to it. I'm worried about getting those kind of designated out. The ones that are made by the CRC membership, I believe we can kind of house here.
There are 2. I didn't understand that. Yeah, there are 2.
And so this, so let's tidy that one up. On that one item, I'll make a motion to refer that to subcommittee 3.
Second.
Let me just get my notes here. Okay, that was Mike Wood. I recognize the voice.
Mike?
Yes.
You're on mute.
No, I wasn't.
Yeah, I think when you originally drew up the proposed method for handling these comments, questions, and suggestions.
School.
Didn't you suggest in there that new ones that came in would just be allocated by you?
Allocated in what sense?
Allocated to a subcommittee or kept to be retained by the committee. And my only thought there is that we sort of approved all those things. So if you were to work on that basis, we wouldn't need to raise a motion for each of these.
Makes sense.
I agree. I think that was a general consensus that you would assign them out, Nick.
Okay. Well, with my newfound powers, I shall designate this one to subcommittee 3. All right, and I'll I mean, I do want to be fair and quickly go through them though, just so the public, anyone at home that's watching this understands that we've seen their comments that have come through and that we will be assigning those. So the other public comment here that doesn't have a home quite as of yet is require that all opportunities for public comment, i.e. public hearings, public comments at town council and board of education meetings, include a mechanism to accept and make available written comments submitted by email or other internet-based means. I would, I'm pretty sure that, so it does have it has a note here, it says with changes in technology, it's important that the town council and board of education accept and consider public comment in forms other than the previous format of a 3-minute speech at the podium. Okay, if I understand that correctly, I think they're asking us to read into the record. We might want clarification. Anna Lee, would you at subcommittee 3 please take the charge of looking further, maybe circling back to the people that have submitted this and kind of clarify?
Or Rich already followed up with them once. He could do it.
All right, and then as far as the other
So
public
that is
comments,
public comment.
so I'm just making sure I'm getting these public comments. These other public comments that are assigned to specific articles will all be referred out to their appropriate subcommittees. So if you're working on Article 2, that would end up in the subcommittee 2's hands if it's tied in there on our tracker. So with that, any just general thoughts or comments for the evening here before we try to wrap this up? Hi, couple of hands, Liam.
Yeah, so Mike Stevenson, I appreciate that the spreadsheet. And I've just shared it out with everyone in a Google format, so people should be able to all go in and edit it or add to it. If we can just flag, because I don't have that list in front of me, the ones that are retained by the whole committee, maybe just have a new moniker for that rather than have the subcommittee assignment 1, 2, and 3. Just so we can make sure we parse those out. My only intention was so that we could sort that spreadsheet by subcommittee work if we wanted to. So
I'd be happy to try to work on that sorting since I have to designate some of that work anyways. So
okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to do that. All right. Any other thoughts before everyone's favorite motion of the evening? No. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
He's made it.
Annalee, was that
Well,
that you?
I was saying who made it. I'm trying to watch and listen.
I said I'd entertain one. I guess I'll just throw it out there. I will make a
And I
motion to
move we
adjourn.
adjourn.
Okay, Richard moved and Nick seconded.
All right. Any discussion? All right. Roll call it. Mike Stevenson,
I'm in favor.
Alan Foster,
I'm in favor.
Annalee Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Karen Shue, Mike Wood, Richard Silkman,
Yes.
Mary Starr,
Yes.
Allison Bristol,
Yes.
Nick McGee, yes. Thank you all so much for your help this evening. I appreciate all the time and the efforts you've really been putting in here. It's been very helpful, and I look forward to our next one. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you, everybody.
Good
Good night, all.
Bye-bye.
Right.